Marvin Lawrence Winans was born on March 5th, 1958, in Detroit, Michigan. He was part of a family that was already known for something special: gospel music. The Winans family wasn't just musical, they were spiritual leaders, and their faith was deep. Marvin's parents, David Pop Winans and Dolores Mom Winans, raised 10 children in a home filled with prayer, church, and music. From the start, it looked like Marvin was born to sing and preach. As a child, he joined his siblings in a group called the Testimonial Singers. Later, that group became the Winans, one of the most powerful and beloved gospel groups ever. You won't believe how fast their music touched hearts around the world. Their songs weren't just about praise. They were full of soul, passion, and something different. Let me tell you, when the Winans sang, people felt it in their bones. Marvin's voice stood out, smooth, strong, and full of feeling. But this wasn't just about music, it was about purpose. He wasn't only performing, he was ministering. As the group grew more popular, they won Grammy Awards and were praised by both gospel fans and mainstream audiences. Marvin had a rare gift. He could take the message of faith beyond the church walls. This is how he started becoming more than just a singer. People respected him, listened to him, and followed him. But here's the shocking part. Behind all the success, Marvin's personal life was slowly heading toward trouble. He married Vicki Winans in 1978. Together, they seemed like a perfect team, powerful in music and in ministry. Fans saw them as the ideal gospel couple, inspiring others with their faith and love. They sang together, preached together, and supported each other's careers. Their son, Marvin Jr., followed in their footsteps too. But not everything that looks perfect on stage stays perfect off stage. This is where it gets interesting. Whispers began to spread. People in church circles started talking. Rumors of infidelity began to surface, and many believed Marvin was the one being unfaithful. At first, no one wanted to believe it. How could someone who preached about faith and family be involved in something like that? But the signs were there. The couple's public appearances started to drop. Their energy on stage was different. Fans noticed the distance, the tension. Something was breaking. The craziest part, even though neither of them spoke openly at the time, Vicki gave subtle hints in interviews. She talked about emotional pain, about betrayal, about being tested. She never said Marvin's name directly, but people could read between the lines. And then it happened. In 1995, Marvin and Vicki Winans got divorced. For their fans, it was heartbreaking. For the gospel world, it was shocking. A couple who had led so many in worship, now broken. The divorce wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the collapse of a public image built on faith, unity, and love. Still, both Marvin and Vicki tried to move on with their lives and careers, but the shadow of that controversy never fully went away. People had questions, people had doubts. And Marvin, though he rarely addressed it directly, carried the weight of that story wherever he went. What makes this story different? Most people in scandals fall apart, but Marvin didn't disappear. He kept singing, kept preaching, even as people whispered behind his back. After the divorce, Marvin Winans kept a strong face in public, but inside, things weren't so steady. The breakup had shaken him more than people knew. Fans still cheered for him at concerts, church members still called him pastor, and awards still came in, but the man behind the microphone was going through a storm. Let me tell you, living in the spotlight while trying to heal from a broken marriage wasn't easy. And just when people thought the controversy was behind him, destiny took an unexpected turn. In 2012, Marvin was pulled over during a regular traffic stop in Detroit. What should have been a simple situation quickly turned into headlines. Police discovered he was driving with a suspended license. For an average person, this might not have been a big deal, but Marvin wasn't just anyone. He was a pastor, a gospel star, and a public figure. The news spread fast. Social media started buzzing. Some defended him. Others criticized him. This is how even the smallest mistake can become front page news when you're in the public eye. But here's the shocking part. That arrest opened the door to more scrutiny. People started digging deeper, asking questions about his personal life, his church, and even his finances. Journalists searched for anything controversial, and suddenly, older rumors began to resurface. Stories that had once died down found new life. It was like the media wouldn't let him move on. What makes this story different? Most celebrities face a scandal, clear it up, and keep going. But Marvin was different. Because of his role as a preacher, he wasn't just held to celebrity standards, he was held to spiritual ones. This is where it gets interesting. While Marvin dealt with legal troubles, another controversy quietly brewed, this time from inside his own family. The Winans family, known for their musical harmony, started showing signs of disharmony. Small arguments between relatives started making their way into the public eye. There were disagreements about business, music rights, and personal choices. Most of it stayed behind closed doors, but not all. Interviews hinted at tension, social media posts were deleted, and fans began to wonder, was the Winans family falling apart? The craziest part? Some of these feuds involved Marvin directly. At events where the family used to sing together, people noticed who wasn't on stage anymore. Some siblings stayed silent. Others gave cryptic answers when asked about Marvin. Nothing was confirmed, but everyone could feel it. Something wasn't right. And just when things started calming down, Marvin faced another problem. Certain people he was seen with began stirring more controversy. As a high-profile pastor, he met with many people, celebrities, politicians, businessmen, but not all of them had clean reputations. One or two were later involved in scandals or legal cases. Even though Marvin wasn't directly connected to their wrongdoings, his name got mentioned. The question became, why was a pastor with such a strong image around people like that? Let me tell you, in the public world, guilt by association is real. People didn't care if Marvin had done anything wrong or not. They just didn't like the company he kept. Church members began to ask questions. Gossip swirled. Some called for him to explain, but Marvin stayed mostly silent. He kept preaching, kept performing, and tried to stay above the noise. Still, the damage had been done. Another layer of controversy had been added to his already complicated story. Even as Marvin Winans tried to keep moving forward, life kept testing him. The pressure of leading a church, staying relevant in the gospel music world, and maintaining a clean image was heavy. But what most people didn't see were the battles happening behind closed doors, the ones no camera could capture. His health started to decline, and once again, his name returned to headlines, not for music or ministry, but for concern. Marvin revealed he had been struggling with diabetes and not just the kind you could ignore. There were complications. Days when he couldn't sing, weeks when he couldn't stand for long sermons. His energy wasn't the same. And for a man who built his life around inspiring others, this was heartbreaking. This is how life humbles even the strongest. His followers noticed. Some whispered, "Is Pastor okay?" Others feared he might step down. But Marvin kept showing up, even when his body begged him to rest. But here is the shocking part. Some people didn't just express concern, they began to doubt. A few even suggested his health problems were a sign, punishment maybe, or the weight of past sins catching up. In the church world, whispers can turn into judgment faster than a prayer ends. Marvin never lashed out, never responded in anger, but the pain of being judged while suffering quietly was something he carried daily. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get harder, a rumor began floating through the church community. One that Marvin was planning to retire. The thought of Marvin leaving the pulpit hit people hard. Was the man who helped shape modern gospel music really going to step away? People started to worry about the future of his church, Perfecting Church, which had grown into one of the largest in Detroit. Some members even left, thinking the end was near. Let me tell you, this was a moment of silence. Not the kind you hear in church, but the kind that comes before change. Marvin didn't say much, but his actions spoke louder than any sermon. He pulled back from public appearances. His voice, once strong and soulful, now sounded tired. He wasn't leading worship the way he used to. And behind the scenes, his close circle started making plans. Just in case he couldn't continue, this is where it gets interesting. In the middle of his health crisis, Marvin made a surprise move. He released new music. Not flashy, not commercial, but deeply personal. Songs that sounded like confessions, songs that sounded like healing. Fans were shocked. Many thought he was done, but instead, he came back with music that felt raw and real. It wasn't about winning awards anymore. It was about survival, redemption, maybe even forgiveness. What makes this story different? Most people fade away when the spotlight dims. But Marvin used the darkness to reflect. He didn't try to escape his past. He didn't pretend the scandals never happened. He sang through them. He preached through them. And somehow he still made people believe. The craziest part, his music during this quiet and painful chapter touched more hearts than ever before. Some fans said they felt a deeper connection. Some said the songs helped them through their own pain. And slowly, people started seeing Marvin not as a fallen icon, but as a wounded warrior, someone who had been through the fire and came out not perfect, but real. As Marvin Winans stepped into the later years of his life, he no longer chased fame. Fame followed him. But now it wasn't about awards or chart-topping songs. It was about legacy. And despite all the ups and downs, Marvin had built a legacy that couldn't be erased. He had become more than a gospel singer, more than a pastor. He had become a symbol of endurance. But here's the shocking part. His greatest lessons didn't come from his success. They came from his pain. The man who once stood on giant stages beside legends like Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston was now standing in quieter places, at hospital bedsides, at small churches, and in rooms where people were just broken and needed hope. He had seen the glamour, but now he focused on the real. His sermons grew deeper. His words came slower but heavier. Let me tell you, when Marvin spoke now, people listened. Not because of his name, but because of his scars. This is how life came full circle. He had started in Detroit as a boy, singing with his brothers, full of dreams and faith. Along the way, he had lost a marriage, faced public shame, watched his body weaken, and even stood at his brother Ronald's funeral with tears he could barely hold back. The pain shaped him, it sightened him, and still, he never stopped showing up. But this is where it gets interesting. Marvin's name began coming up in places no one expected. Young artists started sampling his music. Secular singers began quoting his lyrics. His church became a place of healing, not just for believers, but for the broken, the forgotten, the ones who felt like God had turned away. And Marvin welcomed them all. You won't believe how many people saw him differently now. Not as a perfect man, but a real one. His story was no longer just about gospel music. It was a segi. It was about falling and rising. It was about facing judgment, facing rumors, facing failure, and still standing. And when people asked how he made it through, Marvin gave the simplest answer: God's grace. The craziest part, he never tried to fix his image. He never released a tell-all, never clapped back at his critics, never gave long interviews explaining himself. He let his music and ministry speak. And maybe that's why it worked. Maybe that's why, even after all the drama, the scandals, the pain, people still stood to their feet when he entered the room. Because they saw something familiar in him. Not a star, not a saint, but a survivor. So, what makes this story different? It's not just about a man who made it big. It's about a man who almost lost it all and still kept going. Marvin Winans didn't just sing about faith. He lived it even when it hurt. And that's a story people never forget.